Hi and welcome to another video in my 7 building blocks of Photoshop series. Today we're going to be looking at colour. Now Photoshop uses the foreground colour to paint, fill and stroke selections, and the background colour to make gradient fills and fill in the erase areas of an image. The foreground and background colours are also used by some special effect filters where 2 colours are required, such as the clouds filter. Now you can designate a new foreground colour or background colour using the Eyedropper Tool, the Colour Panel, the Swatches Panel or the Adobe Colour Picker. The default foreground and background colours are black and white. Okay, so how do we choose a colour? Well, down at the bottom of the toolbox you'll find 2 colour swatches. Now the top one is designated as the foreground colour. The bottom one is the background colour. Now the 2 little icons above the swatches allow you to quickly reset the colours to default to black and white, or toggle the foreground and background colours. Or if you have a look quickly at the tooltip, you'll see that the quick way of doing this is to press the D key to reset to default colours and the X key to toggle the colours. So let's have a look at that. We've got black and white at the moment, so if I want to change the foreground colour, I can just click on the foreground colour swatch and it brings up the foreground colour picker. To choose a colour, we've first got the hue slider, so this determines what the actual colour itself is, and then in here I can decide how saturated or how dark and light do I like it. So if I click in there once, you'll see that it now puts a new colour above what was the colour. And then I can click OK. Same thing with the background colour. Click on the background colour swatch. We get the background colour picker. Again, I'll pick a hue and then click in here to decide how saturated or dark and light. So if I pull that down, it gets darker. And if I go left to right, it gets less saturated or more saturated. And then I click OK. Now here we can see we've got 2 different colours of blue. Blue is the foreground colour and green is the background colour. If I want to reset these to black and white, then I can click on this little doohickey at the top here. And if I want to toggle them, I've got this little bent arrow here, that's the toggle. But my favourite method is to use the keyboard shortcuts, which is very useful and you soon get to remember them. Is D for resetting to black and white, and then the X key. If I keep pressing the X key, you'll see it just toggles the black and white round. And that's really useful when you're doing masking. Now another method of choosing a colour is with the Eyedropper Tool. And the Eyedropper Tool is in the toolbox. If you just click on that, you'll see it's nested with several other tools, but this top one, and it's got a nice keyboard shortcut of I for eyedropper. And then we can click anywhere in the image. So if I click here, we get that. You can see my foreground colour has now changed to what was in here. I'll click there, I'll click there, and it goes black. So wherever I click in the document space, it will change the foreground colour to that colour. If I want to select a background colour, then I'll hold the Alt key or the Option on a Mac key down and click. And that will select the background colour for you. There we go. Another method of selecting colour is to use the Swatches panel. So I just click up and open the swatches, and this panel is where you save all the colours that you might want to use in the future, any specific colours. There are lots of default ones that ship with Photoshop, and these along the top here are the last used ones, the last ones that you've used. Now if I want to set the foreground colour to one of my colour swatches, I just hover over it and I click. And you'll see the foreground colour changes to that blue. If I want to change the background colour, then I'll hold the Alt or Option key down and I click on that one. And finally, there's the colour palette itself. So let me just minimise swatches, and here we have the colour palette. And here all we do, we can drag up and down with the hue slider and then click in here to decide whether we're going to make it darker or lighter or less saturated or more saturated. Okay. Right, now let's have a look in a little bit more detail at what's probably the most important one, which is the Adobe Colour Picker. And at first sight it can seem quite daunting, but when you break it down it's not that bad. Now to display the colour picker, we can click on the foreground colour or the background colour. Now the colour picker is also available when you're choosing colours for other tools, for example the type tool. Here we can see that we've got a colour swatch up here which will set the colour for the type tool. Now if we just open up the colour picker, you can choose colours using 4 colour models. The HSB, the hue, saturation and brightness. The RGB, the red, green and blue. There is a lab colour space which is L, A and B. And then there is the print colour space which is CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and the key plate which is black, which is the K. Now we select a colour, it's a 2-stage process really. This vertical bar is the hue bar, and basically that when we click and drag in there, or we can just click, it'll take us to a specific colour. Now how light or dark the colour is and what its saturation is like is dependent on what you click here in the colour box. So if I go up and down, I go lighter with the colour and darker with the colour. If I go left to right, I go less saturated and more saturated. Now you might notice that as you move about this square, you'll see these little symbols appear here. And these are really just for your information. This top one is the warning, and it says it's out of gamut for printing. So what it's telling you is that that particular colour won't render correctly if you print it. This box at the bottom here, underneath it, it tells you that if you click in that, it will take you to the next safest in gamut printable colour. So if I click on that, it takes me down here. So this is telling me that this is safe for print. This next one down is that it's not a web safe colour. And so if I click on that, it takes me to what is now a web safe colour. If I just move back again, you'll see that you can click on this little square again here, and it takes you to the colour that is web safe, that you can quite easily and happily use on any websites, things like that. Now in actual fact, all 4 of these colour models, plus the hexadecimal down at the bottom here, they're all different methods of really referencing the same colour. So where I've clicked in here, this particular colour, if I was to use the HSB colour model, it would be 210 degrees in the hue, 67% saturation and 60% brightness. And basically the hue, this is from the colour wheel. So this is a figure from 0 to 360. Now the brightness, this increases from bottom to top. So we've got darker colours up to brighter colours. And the saturation goes from low saturation on the left over to the right, getting more and more saturated. And you can see as I move it, all the numbers change. So it's exactly the same colour that we're referencing, whether we're doing it from the HSB model, or the RGB model, or the lab model, or the CMYK model. Or in fact, this bottom one as well, which is a hexadecimal reference. Next, we've got the RGB model. And you can choose a colour by specifying its red, its green and its blue components and typing them into the fields. Now the values can range from 0, which is no colour, to 255, which is pure colour. Click either the R, the G or the B button and then adjust the slider in the colour field. And again it's exactly the same, we move up and down and then we pick a colour from in here. Now if these were 0 and 0 and 255, you'll see that we've got at the top here, we've got pure red, And right down at the bottom here, we've got 0, which is no red at all. Okay, moving on. Next, we've got the lab colour model. When choosing a colour based on the lab model, the L value specifies the luminance or brightness of a colour. The A value specifies how red or green a colour is, and the B value specifies how blue or yellow it is. Now, because the lab colour space separates the brightness from the colour, it's a great way of sharpening your images without creating any colour shifts. Next, we've got the CMYK colour space, and you can choose a colour by specifying each component value as a percentage of cyan, magenta, yellow and black. These are the 4 prime colours used in colour printing. And finally, we've this little box at the bottom, which is a hexadecimal reference. It's not really a colour model. Well, I suppose it might be. But basically, we've got a 6-digit reference that specifically identifies that colour in hexadecimal format. Now, you can choose a colour while you're actually in the middle of painting, and this uses what's called a heads-up display colour picker, and it lets you quickly choose colours while you're actually painting in the document window. Now, just an FYI for you here, the HUD colour picker does require OpenGL, so if you haven't got that, then you won't be able to access this picker. But first, we've got a couple of options of choosing the type of HUD that we want. So I'll just get rid of that, and we do this in Preferences. So I'm going to go to Edit and down to Preferences and into General. And here we can see we've got the Adobe Colour Picker selected, which is good, but we've got the HUD Colour Picker, and we've got options for this. I'll just leave it as the Hue Strip Medium, and then I'll click OK. Now first I can select my painting tool, which is my brush tool, and I can just press the B on the keyboard. Then I can press a keyboard shortcut of Shift, Alt and right click, and you'll get this heads up display. So you can move over into the vertical bar to actually choose a colour. So I'll say I'm going to choose a colour of blue, and then I can move in here and say, well, I can choose how saturated or desaturated I want it, or how dark and how light I want it. And that's called the heads up display. Right, how can we make sure that we're always going to choose a web safe colour? Well, the web safe colours are the 216 colours used by browsers. Now, this is regardless of the platform. The browser changes all the colours in the image to these colours when displaying the image on an 8-bit screen. Now, by working only with these colours, you can be sure that you prepare for the web will be fine from a colour point of view. Now, to make sure we do this, let's open the Foreground colour picker, and what we choose is only web colours. Now, this is the range of colours that we know will be absolutely fine for web use. They are all web safe colours. Now let's have a look at the Swatches panel. Now, so far we've manually selected a colour to add to the foreground or background colours that we can use for painting gradients and for tools such as like the type tool. Now, if the colour or series of colours that we could use on a regular basis, it will make so much sense to save them so we can access them in the future. For that, we need the Swatches panel. Now, the Swatches panel is where you can store colours that you use a lot, and they can be accessed from the window and the Swatches menu. And I've already got it open here. I've got my Swatches panel open. Now let's have a look at applying swatches to layers. Now, there are three main methods of applying a colour swatch to a text layer or a shape layer. Now let's just have another image for this. And here we can see we've got some vector artwork and a text layer. And here in the layers panel you can see them all. We've got these trees and a flower, a couple of flowers, and then we've got nature as a text layer. Now if we want to change the colour of anything, then all we've got to do is make sure that that particular layer is active and click on a colour swatch, and that changes that. If we want the shape layer to be a different colour, we just click on that one. If we want more than one to be changed, then we can hold the shift key down and say select all three and then click on a colour. And all three are changed. Another method, I'll just deselect them, is that we can drag the colours. So here I've got, let's say, this colour, and I want my text to be that colour. I can drag it onto the canvas and let go. And then let's go and have a look in our RGB. Let's say we want a nice dark blue colour, and we'll drag that onto the canvas. Now we can also drag a colour swatch onto the layer in the layers panel. So if I want, let's say, this shape 48 to be green, I can just click and drag and drop it onto there, and bingity bong, it goes green. Let's have a couple of pastel colours. Let's say I want that one to be a nice pinky colour, and we'll have that one, we'll make that a nice bluey colour. And then the text, let's have the text, what shall we have it? We'll have it a brownie colour. Boom. Okay, so we can drag from the actual swatches panel onto the canvas area, or we can drag and drop into the layers panel itself. Now if we're using swatches on pixel based layers, then it works slightly differently. So here I've got an image that I've just straightened up and recropped, and it's a pixel based layer. So if I now want to add a colour swatch to this, then I can click and drag and drop it over the layer, and this actually puts me on a colour fill layer with a mask, and it clips it to the layer. I can then just keep clicking to change the colours in it. I can also, let me just get rid of that. I can drag, same as before, I can drag a swatch and drop it in the canvas area. And then if I wanted, I could start looking at doing some blending, maybe soft light and reduce the opacity. And I've got a mask as well, that I could mask areas out of it. Now we've got quite a lot of default swatches, and we can add more. If we go up to the flyout menu, and we could import swatches. So we could import swatches from an external source, such as the internet. But it might be handy just to get a little bit more organised within the panel itself. And we can do that by using groups. So down at the bottom of the panel here, I've got my create new group. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to give my new group a name. Call it my swatches, and click OK. And you'll see now I've got a new group at the bottom. And what I can do is just pick any swatches that I like, that I think, well, I'd like these to go together for some project. And I can drag one and drop it into swatches. And I'll pick a colour from here, from my RGB. Oh, I might fancy a grayscale just to have available quickly. So now I'm building up my own unique set of colour swatches. Now this is good, but can I make my own? Well, yes, you can. First, we'll just make our colour that we want. So I'm going to go to my foreground colour swatch in the colour picker, and I'm going to create a colour that I like. So it can be anything. I can make it lighter, darker. Well, I'll go for something like that. So that's a colour that I actually like, and I think, yeah, I'd like that in my swatches. So I'm going to click OK. So that's now in my foreground colour. So now what I can do is go and add a new swatch preset. So I can click on that and give it a name. Say, what is it? This is a bit of a greeny blue one. So I'll call that greeny blue and click OK. And because I had my swatches open, it's actually put that greeny blue one into my swatches panel. If I wanted, I could click and drag and drop it into another group. Well, that's it for another very important subject in my 7 building blocks of Photoshop. I do hope you found it useful. I'll see you in the very next video. Bye for now.